Officer Daniels and his loyal K-9 partner, Rocky, were on a regular patrol at the airport. The usual hum of activity around them was interrupted when something unusual caught their attention: a lone, abandoned suitcase sitting in the midst of the otherwise empty terminal. As Rocky's highly trained nose picked up a scent from the abandoned luggage, a knot formed in Officer Daniels' stomach. There was something deeply unsettling about the whole situation. Rocky's behavior wasn't normal, and Officer Daniels could sense it immediately. The dog's response was anything but routine. Rocky tugged fiercely on his leash, pulling Daniels along with a force that was both surprising and concerning. Officer Daniels, a seasoned officer, had worked with Rocky for years, and he knew all too well what this behavior meant. The dog would only react this way if he sensed something dangerous or significant. As Rocky pulled harder, Daniels struggled to maintain control. He had no idea what the dog had found, but it was clearly important. He couldn't afford to let Rocky go loose. An uncontrolled K-9 in the middle of the airport would surely cause widespread panic. Despite his confusion and the anxiety creeping up on him, Daniels decided to let Rocky take the lead. But the direction the dog was pulling him didn't make sense. Most of the time, when a suspicious object was detected, it would be near the baggage claim area or the back of the airport where luggage was processed. But Rocky was leading Daniels straight into the central waiting area. This was a place the dog rarely reacted to, and Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As they approached the waiting area, Daniels' nerves were on edge. The thought of walking through the terminal with a dog pulling him forward, especially in the midst of curious onlookers, filled him with apprehension. People would notice, and the last thing he needed was a scene that could complicate the situation further. Sure enough, as they reached the entrance to the waiting area, all eyes were on them. Some passengers stepped back, startled by the unusual sight, while others immediately pulled out their phones to capture the moment. Daniels had no time to worry about the crowd. He had to stay focused. There was something more pressing at stake. Soon enough, Daniels spotted the source of Rocky's intense focus. The sight made his heart drop. In the distance, a bright yellow suitcase sat unattended in the middle of the area. The first thought that ran through Daniels' mind was, what in the world was this doing here? This particular suitcase was out of place. It shouldn't be here. It wasn't the type of luggage that could be carried onto a plane, and it should have been checked in with the rest of the bags at the baggage claim. Furthermore, who would leave a suitcase unattended in such a public space, especially in an airport? Rocky had zeroed in on this very suitcase, but his actions were starting to worry Daniels even more. Instead of going straight up to the luggage and staying close as he was trained to do, Rocky only sniffed it briefly before stepping back and sitting down. This wasn't the dog's usual behavior. If it had been narcotics, Rocky would have started barking and stayed on alert. But instead, the dog had pulled back. Daniels' concern grew deeper as he wondered whether the suitcase might contain something far more dangerous than drugs. As he looked at Rocky's reaction, Daniels quickly realized the dog's behavior might indicate something more ominous, something far outside the ordinary. Rocky's response seemed to align more with one of the many threats they were trained to detect. Daniels could feel the sweat forming on his brow. He was at a critical crossroads. He had to decide what to do next. The crowd around them had started to swell, and Daniels knew he had to act quickly before things got out of hand. The yellow suitcase had drawn too much attention already, and the tension in the air was palpable. Feeling the pressure mounting, Daniels decided to make a bold move. He called out to the crowd, his voice rising above the murmurs. "Is anyone here the owner of this suitcase? Has anyone seen who left it here?" he asked. The people around him seemed to freeze for a moment, but no one responded. It became clear that no one knew anything about the bag. People had probably noticed the suitcase, but most likely thought little of it. After all, a suitcase in an airport wasn't exactly a rare sight. But for Daniels, this was becoming a nightmare scenario. There was no owner, and Rocky's unusual reaction only heightened the sense of urgency. Without wasting any more time, Daniels immediately called for backup. He knew he needed reinforcements. The area around the suitcase had to be cleared. People needed to keep their distance. If there was something dangerous inside, even the slightest movement could trigger a disaster. As Daniels set up a perimeter around the suitcase, he could feel the weight of the situation settling over him. News of the suspicious suitcase spread quickly, and soon a crowd of onlookers had gathered, eager to witness what would happen next. Some passengers, alarmed by the possibility of danger, started to leave the area, while others, driven by curiosity, edged closer to get a better view. The commotion was growing, and Daniels knew he had to maintain control. The tension in the terminal was building by the minute, and soon the sound of sirens filled the air. The bomb squad had arrived. A team of specialists in black vans pulled up to the terminal, and their presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. Daniels watched in awe as the bomb squad's experts unloaded their equipment, a series of robots, armored suits, and specialized gear designed to handle hazardous situations. The sight of these tools was a clear indication of the seriousness of the threat they might be facing. Daniels, along with everyone else in the terminal, understood that the situation had escalated far beyond anything they had anticipated. As the bomb squad moved closer to the suitcase, a metallic voice echoed throughout the terminal, announcing an immediate lockdown. Every door and exit was sealed with a resounding thud, cutting off any possibility of escape. A hushed silence fell over the crowd as passengers whispered to each other, trying to make sense of what was happening. The entire airport was now on edge, the threat of an explosive device hanging over everyone's head. For the travelers waiting for their flights, the announcement hit hard. Outgoing flights were put on hold, causing frustration and concern among the crowd. The uncertainty of the situation left many passengers uneasy. Would they make their connections? How long would they be stuck here? The hours stretched on, and as the minutes ticked by, the weight of the situation grew heavier. The passengers' faces, once filled with excitement and anticipation for their flights, were now filled with worry and impatience. What had started as a routine patrol for Officer Daniels had now turned into a tense and dangerous standoff with unknown consequences. Excitement and anticipation for the various journeys of the passengers began to dissipate, gradually replaced by an overwhelming sense of anxiety and uncertainty. Parents, seeing the growing tension around them, tried their best to shield their children from the palpable fear that had taken hold of the terminal. Others, with a growing sense of dread, began to frantically update their families, their hands trembling as they typed texts or scrolled through news apps, desperate for any piece of information that might offer clarity on the bizarre situation that was unfolding in front of them. Meanwhile, with precise movements, the bomb squad worked tirelessly around the mysterious yellow suitcase. Their every action was deliberate, honed by years of training and experience. With the utmost caution, they carefully prepared the suitcase for an X-ray scan. Each member of the team moved with the calm efficiency that only years of expertise could produce. But as the first X-ray images materialized on the monitor, a wave of confusion swept over the entire team. The results were nothing like they had expected, far from offering a clear answer. The images only deepened the mystery. The object inside the suitcase appeared to be a mass, large and oddly shaped, filling almost the entire space of the luggage. Its form was irregular, making it nearly impossible to identify with the standard scanning technology. Whispers of uncertainty rippled through the bomb squad as each expert tried to make sense of the strange findings. Their initial theories about what might be inside the suitcase quickly became a matter of heated debate. Some members, relying on their vast experience and knowledge, speculated that it was a false alarm, perhaps even a prank. After all, they had encountered countless situations where fears had been overblown. However, others, more cautious by nature, were not ready to dismiss the potential threat so quickly. The tension between the two sides was palpable, the atmosphere thick with conflicting opinions and uncertain conclusions. In an effort to find clarity, the lead technician from the bomb squad approached Officer Daniels. They hoped to gain insight into the behavior of Daniels' K9 partner, Rocky, and how the dog's distress might align with the ambiguous results of the X-ray scan. As they exchanged information, they delved deeper into Rocky's training and his impeccable track record of successfully detecting threats. Daniels explained the dog's reactions, particularly his unusual behavior around the suitcase. Together, they tried to reconcile the dog's apparent distress with the unclear findings on the monitor, hoping to come to a decision that could guide the next steps. The air in the terminal was thick with tension as the wait dragged on. The conflicting information, the undeniable signs of distress from Rocky and the ambiguous images from the X-ray, made it impossible to make a definitive judgment. The passengers, growing more restless by the minute, exchanged nervous glances and whispered anxiously to one another. They searched for any answers, any signs that could explain the situation, but none came. For the moment, they were all left in the dark. The bomb squad, recognizing the limitations of the X-ray, made the decision to call for more advanced scanning technology. The hope was that this specialized equipment, typically reserved for the most high-stakes investigations, could provide a clearer image of the suitcase's contents. But as they waited for the equipment to be delivered, the situation in the terminal continued to unfold. The once bustling waiting area, filled with the sounds of casual conversations and the hum of travel, had transformed into a hive of anxiety. Whispers had turned into louder murmurs as passengers shared their concerns and speculations, each person trying to make sense of what was happening. Beyond the terminal's glass doors, a different kind of spectacle was unfolding. Reporters, having caught wind of the developing crisis, arrived in droves, camera crews in tow. Bright lights illuminated the scene as news anchors prepared for live broadcasts, eager to share the latest developments with their audiences. Meanwhile, social media exploded with activity, as hashtags related to the airport incident began to trend almost immediately. Eyewitness videos, photos, and wild speculations flooded online platforms, with some posts fueling unnecessary panic and others calling for calm amidst the growing frenzy. Inside the terminal, passengers began to reach out to their loved ones, sending frantic texts and making hurried phone calls to reassure them of their safety. But these well-meaning gestures had the unintended consequence of heightening the panic outside. Families, desperate for answers, feared for the safety of their loved ones trapped in the terminal. The lack of concrete information only fueled the flames of uncertainty. In an effort to regain control of the narrative and calm the public, the airport's public relations team issued a press release. While it reassured the public that every measure was being taken to ensure safety, it offered little in the way of actual information. The vague statement did little to alleviate the mounting unease inside the terminal, where passengers and their families outside continued to search for clear answers. Realizing the potential danger of leaving the suitcase in such a densely populated area, senior airport officials convened a rapid strategy meeting. The consensus was clear: the suitcase needed to be relocated to a more secure, isolated location. Detailed plans were drawn up, with contingencies in place for every possible scenario. However, as the meeting progressed, tensions began to rise. Some officers, fearing the worst, argued that the only way to eliminate the risk was to destroy the suitcase outright. Others, including Officer Daniels, felt that such an extreme action might be premature, especially given the inconclusive findings so far. The risk of destroying an innocent suitcase weighed heavily on Daniel's mind. But so did the potential consequences of leaving it unchecked. In the midst of the heated debate, someone suggested consulting Dr. Nathan Hayward, a renowned explosive specialist with decades of experience. Dr. Hayward had handled numerous high-profile cases around the world and was widely regarded as one of the best in the field. A quick call was made, and arrangements were set for Dr. Hayward to be flown in immediately. As they waited for his arrival, the suitcase was carefully moved by a team of officers using robotic arms to ensure the utmost safety. It was gingerly placed on a specialized trolley designed for hazardous materials and, surrounded by a convoy of officers, was transported to its new, more secure location. While waiting for Dr. Hayward and the arrival of more advanced scanning technology, the situation continued to spiral out of control. As the terminal remained closed, the ripple effect was felt throughout the airport. Passengers were redirected to neighboring terminals, causing overcrowding, and planes were left stranded on the tarmac, unable to get to their gates. The normally efficient hub had become a chaotic mess, with walkways clogged and delays piling up. The cacophony of stressed passengers echoed through the airport as people received notifications about missed connections and cancelled flights. This was supposed to be a simple layover, one exasperated traveler muttered, summing up the frustration of countless others. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit boardroom, airport management was grappling with the crisis, trying to balance public safety with the need to maintain the airport's reputation as one of the busiest in the world. We can't afford a security lapse, but we also can't allow the entire airport to grind to a halt, the CEO remarked, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. The airlines were not spared from the upheaval. Ground staff scrambled to handle the surge of inquiries while flight crews anxiously awaited further instructions on potential rescheduling. Customer service counters became overwhelmed with passengers seeking alternative flights, leading to extended wait times and rising tempers. Despite their best efforts, the sheer volume of passengers seeking answers was too much to handle. The airport was in the midst of a collective yearning for clarity. with passengers huddling around screens and speakers, waiting for an official announcement. Inside the security command center, officers hunched over multiple screens, fast-forwarding and rewinding hours of surveillance footage. Their focus was intense as they combed through the footage in search of any clue that might explain the origins of the mysterious suitcase. Sweat dotted the foreheads of the operators as they knew the significance of their task. At 10:42 a.m., the footage revealed a lone individual, visibly anxious, placing the suitcase near the check-in counter. Their behavior seemed odd, as they glanced around nervously, ensuring no one was watching them. After setting the suitcase down, the individual quickly blended into the crowd, disappearing from view. Armed with still images from the video, a professional sketch artist was called in to create a detailed profile of the suspect. Within a few hours, a composite sketch had emerged, highlighting key features: a scar near the left eyebrow, piercing blue eyes, and a patchy beard. The sketch was quickly disseminated, both within the airport and to other law enforcement agencies. The hunt for the person responsible was now on in earnest, with security teams fanning out to search every corner of the airport complex. Nearby hotels and transport hubs were also alerted, as every officer understood the gravity of the situation. With the urgency mounting, the airport's PA system crackled to life. Its tone was far more serious than the usual announcements, commanding everyone's immediate attention. The message that followed described the individual responsible for the suitcase, setting the stage for a desperate race against time. The scene inside the terminal had shifted from one of bustling anticipation to one heavy with anxiety and fear. The passengers, who had been waiting to board flights, now found themselves caught in a growing sense of unease. The voices over the airport's PA system had spoken of a potential threat, and the ripple of concern spread quickly. Like wildfire, people who had been casually preparing for their travels now became unwitting participants in a high-stakes drama. The tense atmosphere left no one untouched, as every individual seemed to become a makeshift detective, scanning the surroundings for anything unusual. The buzzing of the security hotline shattered the already fragile silence, bringing an eerie distortion to the voice on the other end. "The suitcase is just a decoy," the voice rasped, its mechanical tone adding to the feeling of dread. "Look beyond the obvious." Before anyone could inquire further, the call was abruptly disconnected, leaving the room in a chilling quiet. The weight of the cryptic message hung heavily in the air. Officer Daniels, who had just been briefed on this anonymous tip, felt his stomach twist in a knot. Was this the warning of a legitimate threat, or just another prank? In the tense environment, he weighed the gravity of acting on incomplete and questionable intel, but he knew all too well the catastrophic consequences that complacency could bring. With uncertainty mounting, Daniels took no chances. His decision was swift and resolute: another terminal would be evacuated. It was an action driven by instinct and a desire to prevent any potential harm. Security teams, with sharp eyes and heightened awareness, swept through the terminal, scanning for anything out of place. The passengers were moved quickly, their faces betraying the confusion and fear taking root. What had once been a space filled with laughter, hugs, and tearful goodbyes had transformed into something far more unsettling: a militarized zone. The noise of hurried footsteps and hushed voices echoed, amplifying the tension, as whispers turned into louder murmurs. Speculation among the passengers began to run rampant. Parents instinctively pulled their children closer, while travelers nervously checked and rechecked their belongings, their eyes darting suspiciously at every bag or abandoned item left in the open. The once efficient corridors of the airport had become a maze of uncertainty. Multiple calls poured into the security lines: an unattended backpack near Gate 12, a strange box found in a restroom, and each report sent teams of officers racing to the scene. But one by one, the alarms were proven false. Each item turned out to be something benign: a forgotten laptop bag, a box of misplaced toys, a discarded suitcase full of clothes. Despite these false alarms, the heightened alertness among the staff remained. The tension had not dissipated, it was simply redirected. With so much activity revolving around the mysterious suitcase, Daniels made the decision not to focus all his resources on one potential threat. He suited up in tactical gear and assembled a team to comb the expansive airport. He issued a simple yet crucial command: stay sharp and report anything, no matter how trivial it might seem. The sprawling airport was a vast complex, and the threat could be hidden anywhere. A breakthrough came when they discovered an isolated cargo area. Normally, the area would be bustling with activity, but now it was eerily silent. Daniels, whose trained eyes had seen it all, immediately noticed signs of forced entry. A discarded walkie-talkie on the ground caught his attention, and as his team investigated further, it became clear that something had recently transpired in this corner of the airport. The dimly lit cargo area, once a place of routine logistics, had become the setting for a tense confrontation. Security officers closed in on a group of individuals attempting to conceal their presence. Their nervous manner and evasive responses raised immediate red flags. Without hesitation, the group was detained and taken to a secure location for questioning. Inside the stark interrogation rooms, the detainees' stories began to unravel. The accounts they provided didn't align with one another, and their justifications for being in the cargo area seemed rehearsed, as if they were following a script. The sweat beading on their brows and the furtive glances exchanged between them suggested their nerves were fraying. Under the intense pressure of the officers' questioning, their defenses began to crack. The truth came to light: the suitcase had achieved its goal. But not in the way anyone had expected. It wasn't the actual threat, it was a diversion, a clever ruse to redirect resources away from a more sinister plot. But the question remained: what was the real threat? And why was it targeting the airport? As the mystery deepened, Daniels and his team felt the weight of the unanswered questions pressing down on them. They had to dig further. When the suitcase was finally opened, the scene inside was nothing short of horrifying. Exotic animals, their eyes barely fluttering as they fought to stay conscious, were crammed into tight, suffocating spaces. Gasps of disbelief filled the room as those present struggled to comprehend the twist the day had taken. The immediate fear of an explosive threat had faded, replaced by a chilling realization: this wasn't about political motives or terrorism. This was something far more sinister, a heinous crime against nature. The terminal buzzed with new whispers, and one phrase was repeated over and over again: illegal wildlife trade. Authorities quickly began to piece together the evidence. Invoices, shipping labels, and coded messages found inside the suitcase painted a grim picture. Endangered animals, treated like mere commodities, were being trafficked across borders, hidden in plain sight. The operation, sophisticated and ruthless, relied on the chaos of busy airports to mask its illicit activities. The once elusive man from the security footage now had a name, and a reputation that stretched across the globe. He was notorious, linked to multiple international smuggling operations. His criminal record was a web of aliases and dark dealings, and yet he had always managed to stay one step ahead of the law. The true scale of the operation began to unfold before Daniels and his team, revealing an expansive and heartless network that profited from the suffering of countless animals. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a small glimpse into a much larger, shadowy world of wildlife trafficking. Within hours, the task force had pinpointed the trafficker's location. The operation was swift, and soon, the man was captured, his face paraded in front of flashing cameras. As details of his operations emerged, so too did the heartbreaking stories of the animals he had stolen from the wild, many of them never surviving the treacherous journey. The heartless nature of this industry was laid bare, and the fight against it had only just begun. For Officer Daniels, his K-9 partner Rocky had become an unlikely hero. His sharp instincts and unwavering dedication had been instrumental in unraveling the plot. The story of Rocky's alertness and diligence captured the hearts of the nation. His courage was recognized, and he was awarded medals and treats for his role in averting disaster. Talk show hosts clamored for interviews, and children sent letters expressing their admiration. K-9 units, across the country, found a new sense of respect and appreciation, with teams revisiting their training programs and using Rocky's story as a source of inspiration. The bond between handlers and their K-9 partners had deepened, with the public now recognizing the invaluable contribution these dogs made in keeping them safe. The impact of the crisis rippled far beyond the terminal. Airport management, faced with the reality of a threat they had never expected, took immediate action. New security protocols were implemented, with a focus on thoroughly checking unattended bags and ensuring that the airport remained vigilant against the scourge of illegal activities. Workshops were organized for staff, educating them on the signs of wildlife trafficking and how to spot potential threats. The airport, once a place of routine travel, had become a symbol of resilience and renewed commitment to safety. What began as a routine day at the airport turned into an unfolding crisis, one that exposed the dark underworld of wildlife trafficking, shed light on the bravery of K-9 units, and ultimately strengthened the resolve of authorities to tackle a crime that had been hiding in plain sight. The lessons learned from the terrifying ordeal would echo far beyond the airport walls, ensuring that the fight against such atrocities would continue, no matter how difficult or dangerous it might be.